What is up, YouTube? This is the Working Investor. Several of my viewers were asking me to do a back test on some of the sandwiches like TSLY, CRSH, CONY, Fiat. And so in this video, we're going to do I did some back testing, crunching all the numbers, did it all for you guys. And we're going to talk about what my conclusions are and if I will continue or not continue in the strategy, how it's looking and where I am, and other considerations. So let's start off with the TSLY crash. So for the TSLY crash backtesting, I went back as far as I can since crash has been in existence, because crash is the inverse ETF for TSLY. So I'm using these inverse funds to hedge my bets and try to keep my NAV stable. Let's see how that's working out. So if somebody hypothetically bought crash when it first opened up on May 2nd, about a little over 3 months ago, they would have paid $20.28 per share. Today, crash is down to $15.14 pre-market. So that comes out to be a loss of $5.14 in net asset value, which equates to being down 25.34%. However, for total returns, you have to consider the dividend distributions of $2.61 total over the past 3 months, which means that your net NAV would be down $2.63. So your net NAV is down 12.96%. What about TSLY? If someone bought TSLY exactly around the same day, May 2nd, they would have paid $15.80. Today, TSLY is down to $14.22 pre-market, so which comes out to be a $1.58 loss in net asset value, which equates to 10% down. However, if you want to get total return, it actually, interestingly enough, the payouts were exactly the same if you added up the 3 payments of both TSLY and crash for those 3 months, which is $2.61, which actually is not a negative. It's actually a positive. That means that you're net up $1.03, which equates to 6% increase. So now let's say if you put $1,000 each, $1,000 in crash, $1,000 in TSLY, which means you have a core number of $2,000, and you're focusing on that $2,000 as being your core, that would purchase $63.29 shares of TSLY. And if you multiply the 63.29 shares of TSLY, multiply the price of TSLY today, and you add it to the dividends that those shares would collect you, that means that you would get $1,065.17 total value of net asset value plus dividends. If you do the same thing with the inverse of crash, which that would buy you $1,000 would buy you 49.3 shares on May 2nd. And if you multiply that by the price today and you add the dividends, that means your total from the $1,000 went down to $875.07. By holding these inverses together, if you sum it up, including the dividends, after the dividends, it would equate your $2,000 would actually magically decline to $1,940.24, even after the dividends. So that means that one would lose just under $60. That means that you lost about 3% of your value total. Let's talk about Fiat and Cony. So let's start with the inverse. So Fiat came out on July 10th. So we only have 1 month worth of data and 1 dividend distribution. So if someone purchased it when it came out, they would pay $19.85 per share. Today, pre-market, it's worth $20.10 per share. So that means you're up 25 cents in net asset value, or 1.25% up. But you have to also add the payouts to get total return of $1.89. So that means you're net up $2.14, or 10.7%. That's for the inverse of Fiat. If you look at Cony on the exact same date of July 10th, it was trading around $19.09. Today, pre-market, it's worth $16.24. So that's a net loss of $2.85 in net asset value, or almost 15% down. They did make 1 distribution in this 1 month period of time, which is $1. So that means if you take $1 off 285, you have, it's really 285, so it should be 185. I guess I see my math is off here, about like a penny. So it should be 185. So it's off by a penny. So you're about 9.6% down. So in the same scenario, if you put 1,000 in Fiat and then 1,000 into Cony. That means your core number is $2,000. So I just did the math quickly. I did a different way to do the math where you just take $1,000 and I looked at how much the percent of fiat. Fiat was up 10%, so you 10.7%. So I just multiplied by times 1.107, and that gave me $1,107 in fiat. That's a quick way to do the math. Or $1,000 times 0.9073. Basically, I subtracted the 9.63 from 1, and that gave me $903.70 of Cony. Add them up together, you have 2,000. So you're up by $10.70. Woohoo! From the from the Cony Fiat sandwich from a 1 month history, or you made 0.5% in a month. Making 0.5% in a month is not very sexy and exciting because that comes out to be like 6% annualized return in a year, and this is including dividends, but there are some shortcomings and some considerations of this backtest. Number one, you're not using core number compounding. This is just like you're just buying it in and you're not doing anything about it. You're not managing anything that I'm doing. So, and also, so I constantly with core number compounding, I'm reducing my cost basis for free without putting any new money in. For example, in these cases, if I had 1,000 each fund, and if one day there's an update and one fund is worth like $1,100, I would sell the $100 and buy the reciprocal fund, and that would effectively lower the cost basis. Whenever one is overpriced, I would sell, clip off the top, buy off the other. So I'm constantly lowering my cost basis, so hence that could increase your total return. Core number compounding also, sometimes when you clip off from one side and you use the proceeds that you clipped off from one side that's up to buy in on the other side to lower the cost basis on the other side, there could still be an excess left over, so that also can provide extra cushion. This does not include dividend reinvested. I've done dividend reinvestment for the last time. I'm thinking this time to keep it separate so it makes my accounting easier. Taxes will be a negative because by doing these strategies, you're constantly doing taxable events, I would imagine. Also, you're basing it on two specific points in time. Like, I think most people would not want to jump on a fund the second it pops off the shelf because you never know how it functions. Some people look at it for a little bit. So everybody has their own customizable point A, point B when time they get in, time they get out. So it's hard to really make conclusions. Also, the biggest thing is the time horizon. It's only 3 months of data for the TSLY crash sandwich, and I only have 1 month of data and one dividend distribution for the Cony Fiat. So maybe it's hard to extrapolate. And also, let's compare the theory to what's happening with my portfolio and see if there's any discrepancies. Because according to this theory, I didn't include NVIDIA and DIPS intentionally because they're so new, even newer than Fiat, and DIPS did not even pay a distribution in August, so it is so few data. But so my portfolio pre-market, like in these sandwiches, I finally got the sandwiches up to 45,000, and right now, without looking into how much I ripped off the top in excess, I have $45,630. So 1% of $45,000 is $450. So I have more than 1%. According to the math, at best, from the TSLY crash, I should be down. And then from the Cony Fiat, I should only be up maybe 0.5%. So I'm doing much better than that because I'm doing these managements. And the reason why I'm talking about this, just to show a visual, let's say, when you bought, in the case we talked about where you buy on May 2nd for $15.80, you buy TSLY. And if you if you do core number compounding, what happened over here? Let's zoom in. What happened over here? All this time when TSLY was above your cost basis, if you just watched it and your portfolio did nothing, then eventually it goes down and you're like, oh man, I wasted opportunity. But with core number compounding, as soon as you see you're up, you sell into pumps. So one would have received some of this net profit, and that could have offset some of the loss when it went down. So instead of just holding it flat, that's why it's hard to look at it linearly. But I am objective and I am open to seeing if this is a viable strategy or not. Right now, pre-market, like I said, that's how I have the extra. You see here, I have my core number for NVIDIA is 9,000. For dips, it's 6,000. So they're both up a little right now. Of course, the market's been up pretty well. TSLY, my core number is 7,500. Crashed at 7,500, but you could see that I'm up about 200 in TSLY, and I'm down just under 300 in Crash. So I'm in net deficit right now over there. And then Cony and Fiat, each of these holdings, my core number is 7,500. I'm actually up above my core number in both, which is quite crazy wild. So yeah, so just some food for thought. But we shall see. We shall see if how this is working out. Is it just a zero-sum game, or is it as good as it sounds? We shall see. Anyways, this is the Working Investor over and out. I hope you guys have a awesome trading day.